Enjoyed listening to Nicola over the years. And Nicola, I appreciate you taking the time. So if you don't mind, if I go straight into it, I was going to ask you maybe to give us a wee bit of background about your career and how you got where you are and some of your beliefs. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm Nicola Penman. I'm a chartered member of the Institution of Occupation of Safety and Health. I started off in health and safety by accident. It became my responsibility when I worked as an estimator in construction to get the organisation through the third party accreditation, which is called Safety Cert. The guys that I worked for were really decent human beings. And there were some really nice guys on the site, and they were rough and ready and all the rest of it. But it became my responsibility to get them through this with absolutely no qualifications whatsoever. And I'm always very well-meaning, and I'll Google my way through it and do my very best to get there. But the fellas on the site's perception was that it wasn't because the company and because the powers that be were worried or were concerned about their health and safety. It was all to do with getting government contracts and making more money. Now, I refuted this and went through the motions and actually got the company through Safety Cert. But we came in with a D, which I didn't really fancy, but I was talking to the directors and said, right, now we'll have to improve. And they said, Nicola, you don't have to do anything else. All we wanted to do was get Safety Cert, which made it obviously clear that the guys on the site who said it was all to do with getting bigger contracts were telling the truth. Now, this really hit me hard, and I decided that when I realised that there was legislation out there, which I knew there was legislation, health and safety, like everybody else probably looked heavenwards, but I didn't realise that how well protected we were and how badly it was being done and how people were really only ticking boxes. So I did my NEBOSH General Certificate, I did my NEBOSH Fire, I went to Queen's University and did a Master's in Occupational Safety and Health. I jumped through all the hoops to get through to be a chartered member of OSH. As you yourself know, it's not an easy feat. And even now, what I see is that there is not enough being done to keep people safe at work. If we as mentors, now I'm an awful lot older than you, but if we can encourage young people and even tell them about the pitfalls of maybe just trying to get through exams but not understanding completely how that is implemented into the workplace, so that you just don't get exams and then start to get the experience that you actually have workplace learning. If we can do that, then people who get the exams and are doing this sort of study will hit the ground running. And again, young people, you know yourself, and I can remember vaguely of thinking about when I was young and people talking about, you know, your health and your fitness and your mobility, and you used to think to yourself, I'd rather have a new car. The actual fact about it is that if we don't look after those things, in a time when the National Health Service is on its knees, we're going to be in trouble. So I hope that I can help people to both the employers and your senior managers to put in place controls to keep people safe so far as is reasonably practical, but also a big one is involving the people in the workplace. Why would I tell an electrician how to carry out his work? What I should do is I could tell him a little bit about the health and safety. We could marry the two with his competency in his electrical work, and between the two of us we could come up with a safer way of doing things. And that's the same as a guy who's doing work on the roads, a guy who's working with waste management, or someone who's working in IT. It's not a case about here's somebody going to tell me how to do my job. Here's somebody who knows a wee bit about health and safety, and they're going to help me to do this job even safer. So that's where I am.
Here, that's brilliant stuff, Nicola. I have to say a lot to unpack there. I mean, I suppose just the last thing you said, if I dig into it a wee bit, I couldn't agree more about, trying to tell competent workers how to do their work. And what I mean by that, RAMs, for example, yeah, of course, I'll do the risk assessment, yes, but I want to work alongside the guys doing the actual work for the actual method of the work. And then I want to work with them, detail that out. And between them and between us, then we're going to get a safe method of work together. So it's a really good point because I know in a lot of companies, and I've seen it myself out there, people will ask the health and safety person, oh, you just go and produce me a set of RAMs. And they'll go and they'll do the best job that they can, but it's not done in collaboration with the guys carrying out the work. And then, when the guys actually see it, it's maybe not marrying up with what they're seeing as real and in practice. So I couldn't agree more. Great point, Nicola.
And sometimes, David, another thing to think about is that some people are not academically educated, or some people actually can't write or read, okay, in this society. So we're assuming that we give someone who's on the tools, whatever job they're doing, we're assuming if we give them a piece of paper that they know what to do with that. Whereas if they had some kind of control, so if they a certain amount of autonomy, this is what I think, then they would have an ownership of it, but they would have been told in a verbal way that they could understand. And that can be a colourful way, because you're dealing with people who are really on the tools, workmen and whatever it is. So it's been able to get down there and meet them on the same level, and not be sitting looking down on people. So there's a lot to be done, and respect. I think respect for everybody who carries out work, whether you're a cleaner, a gardener, or you're a brain surgeon. You're carrying out a job competently, and you deserve respect.
I agree. Couldn't agree more. In fact, in previous places I've worked, and I actually would nearly be alongside the thinking this way, is that a lot of times it's the guys at the sharp end of it, the guys and girls at the sharp end of it, they're the ones actually keeping the wheels turning, and they're the ones keeping us all working. Here, there's no need for health and safety if there's nobody doing work. So
No,
we
if it
need them.
wasn't for those people, they're giving us our pay, David. At the
That's
end of the day, it's their hard work and them standing out in the rain and everything else to do with it is getting us, if it's paying our mortgage at the end of the month and all the rest of it. So a bit of respect, and that's something that's not maybe totally. People may feel respect. It's showing it.
yes.
And even when we are, as health and safety people who know a wee bit about health and safety, it is us showing the respect and listening, active listening to what that person, this is how the job's done, David. This is what happens. This is what I see when I'm out there. And then you listening to that and not just talking over the top and just this is what you're going to do. So we can all learn and we can all improve drastically. Again, active listening. Sometimes I'm too busy talking to be listening, so I'm taking a wee leaf out of your book when I'm thinking about this. So the floor's
Well, I'm
yours now.
trying. I'm trying because I'm a bit like yourself. I have a habit of talking, but I'm trying. And here, going back to the respect of the workers again, like I couldn't agree more. From my experience, that to foster a positive health and safety culture, it's only achievable through listening to the guys and girls and respecting what they're saying and hearing what they're saying and working with what they're saying, and then
Yeah.
empowering the guys and girls that really this is their place of work. And
Yes.
one of the lines that I would always be working with is that it's their work area and it's down to them to control it. And I'm here to assist and support you guys to control your work area. But anyway, there was another very good point that you'd made, and I thought it was very valuable, which is about regulations. I mean, from my experience, everybody's heard of the Health and Safety at Work Act in England and the Health and Safety at Work Order in Northern Ireland. Everybody's heard about these, but there is plenty of other regulations that seem to slip through the cracks. From my
Mhm.
experience, such as the management of health and safety at work regulations, and I know that the management standards are not regulations as such, but even them are very valuable. And I noticed that a lot of different, organizations are just simply not aware.
This is exactly it. They need to be educated, and they now I do feel that again with health and safety, we nearly need to get people, the kids. So we nearly need to be going into schools when kids are maybe 14 and upwards, so that they know, because what they're in school and they're in a very controlled environment and they're safe in school, and they're looking forward to the time that they get out and they're let loose. But in actual fact, them being let loose into a workplace can be very dangerous for them and other people.
Mhm.
So, in a very fun and very enjoyable way of letting people understand about health and safety, how that's going to be for them, how important they are. Because young people who come out and they're safety conscious will maybe be a bit of a sort of an example to the old timers who think, well, I've got through it to this time and I've never listened to health and safety. So it might be a situation, hey, there might be something to this. So like everybody could be valuable. Now, one other thing, you've been talking about the management standards, and one thing I think is very, very important, as you know yourself, almost half of the people who are off work at the moment, say it's 175,000 people, are off work because of stress, anxiety, or depression. Now, that's the people who are admitting to stress, anxiety, and depression. There may be builders, there may be people who are working on tools or whatever who are off supposedly with bad backs or whatever, who may be suffering from it. So the number is what who has actually reported it. I feel that if we as safety people got a better understanding to people in the workplace of what the employer is providing for them,
Hmm.
this could be, so if a situation where you're talking about the management standards, if we talked about demands, people have got information, instruction and training. They've got the right tools for the job. They've got the right safe system of work for the job. They've got the right PPE, which is their last defence for the job. Then the autonomy, we have talked to you and you have been part of the risk assessment process. So they are going to feel as if that's something that's something they own. Then
Hmm.
the support. What do I do if I'm overwhelmed or if things are going wrong? Where's the support? And you know that's there. Relationships. Some people think you maybe get a Ballymena man, and they always get the sort of the name of being mean or whatever. Well, maybe if you're a Ballymena man, you don't like that. Maybe you think that's a bit of bullying. So you can go along and say, listen, would you stop the boys keep every time I turn round? So relationships are properly managed. Role. No conflicting roles, not be pulled in all directions. And if there is going to be change, everybody kept up to date. That all of that is going to keep people physically and mentally safe in the workplace. Now they might have all kinds of problems outside of work, which is unfortunately life. But if they could come into a workplace for a shift of 8 to 10 hours or whatever it happens to be, and they're in a safe place, that's going to be beneficial to their mental health, I think. What do you think yourself?
No, I think that's very important and very valuable and very well put as well. I mean, I'm sure you're probably seeing the suicide rates in construction right now are absolutely devastating. I mean, I think it's what,
2 people, 2 people a day, 2 people a day.
unreal,
All
and it's like
right.
what, 3 to 4 times higher than other industries. And like
Awful.
I don't want to be complaining about any sort of standard of organizational approach to it, but what I'm finding is, and it's just my own humble opinion, that because mental health is something where it's ambiguous in the sense, is it from the outside of work coming into work, or is it from in work coming outside of work? I
Yeah.
find that there's less willingness to actually broach and tackle this issue, but it needs
Well,
addressed.
one thing I would think of it because with regards to discrimination and things like that, we have to have make reasonable adjustments for people who maybe have mental or physical challenges and whatever in the workplace. But one time somebody actually, I was at a thing at Queen's and they were talking about accessibility, and this was to do with physical accessibility into toilets, going through doors and all. And instead of it being disabled, it
Hmm.
was accessible. If everybody was treated the same way with the same respect, now I'm not talking about the reasonable adjustment, but there may be a time in someone's life when those things outside of work maybe are challenging, whatever, where they can come in to speak to someone who for support, and they can be allowed reasonable adjustment to look after their mental health. Now, not only is that going to be beneficial to the person, that's going to be beneficial to the family, but it's going to be beneficial in the long term
Definitely.
to the organisation.
I
And
agree.
it's really important. Sometimes you and I have been there, NEBOSH, and all the rest of it, and we looked at moral, legal, and financial. When I'm teaching people, I would do IRS courses and whatever. I'm teaching people. I'm saying, you're going to see what makes your employer tick. Now, if he's going to be a moral person and he doesn't want anybody to get hurt in his watch, when you're making a business case, you'll make sure you have something written about that. If it's going to be that he doesn't want to wear the stripy jammies and go to jail, that one, and I says, or maybe he is hit him where it hurts on his wallet. I says, so whatever, if that would be your financial one. So the situation being is that employers need to understand what's in it for them to look after people mentally and physically, but also let them know and understand that this is what we're doing for your health and safety. So that, because if you don't, they take it for granted. So you've got the best of tools, you've got the best of workwear, you've got the best of training, and all the rest of it. That we've done this for you. You've got a good welfare facility. Saw a picture on LinkedIn today of a toilet, and some place who fixes cars in England had been fined for their welfare facilities. You never saw the like of it and all the rest.
Hmm.
Your welfare, you go into your welfare facilities, and it's warm, it's clean, it's okay, and all the rest. You might the flowers on the table and all the rest of it, but it's somewhere that you feel comfortable. So it's making people understand if you're doing that, then people go out and they do their work. Somebody comes in and has a cup of tea in that sort of environment, or goes to the toilet, they come out and do their work instead of coming out really feeling a bit negative.
It's good from my perspective to see the welfare facilities getting a bit of a focus, because I must admit, I'm sure you're the same, Nicola. Over the years, oh, there's been some horror stories out there. I've seen some diabolical facilities.
Uh-huh. It's absolutely, and so important, David. You
Hmm.
know, if you were out, we were looking at the snow in Northern Ireland. We don't get too much of it, whatever, so we nearly have a heart attack when we do. But when you're looking out there and you're driving along in your car and say, this is awful, and then you look at the guys covered in snow standing working on the road, you know, where are they going to go for a cuppa? Where are they going to
That's
go and
right.
get warmed up? Is it
That's
there?
it.
If I was with the health and safety executive, I'd be an absolute nightmare. I'd be straight in there looking at them, and I would say, here's your woman coming. But
Oh, to be lucky to have you,
yeah.
Nicola.
Oh dear, too old, too old.
Oh, you don't look it at all. Here, if you don't mind, I was going to ask you about your observations of workplaces in general, and then even potentially over the years, the developments, the improvements, or room where we still have to improve, room where organisations could improve.
Well, I think an awful lot of organisations have got the message, and more newer builds, newer places that have been recently refurbed and things like that, certainly look a lot safer. You can see very well marked walkways, or physical barrier walkways, good lighting, segregation of people and vehicles and all the rest of it. But sometimes when you get into the nitty gritty, and I'll not mention any organisations or whatever, you go into some part of an organisation that's maybe carrying out a certain amount of work. And I know one particular one, but I'm definitely not going to mention the name of it. And it was like a workhouse. It was abandon hope, all ye who enter here. So the rest of the lot of the buildings and where the people were working and doing admin and whatever was superb. But then this particular part of it, which is a big part of it, that we're carrying out a lot of work with a lot of chemicals and
Mm.
things like this. It was dirty, it was sticky. The equipment was covered in different kinds of like fiberglass and sticky adhesives,
Hmm.
and it was a death trap. So I think they need to look at all parts of the work, and there was a lot of maybe people there that were different nationalities of people, and maybe I don't know whether the thought was that didn't matter, but it definitely did matter. And I looked at it and thought, oh my goodness, this is awful, and
Hmm.
and I'd been brought in. To see this fantastic new paint bay that was state of the art, and this was in the middle of it, and I'm sort of looking and thinking this is awful. So yes, new bills and all the rest of it, people might be a lot better. Um, and then I've gone into to organisations where everything was perfect, but I was given a look round and shown out through a door that didn't have any signage on it, and I nearly walked into a moving forklift truck.
Oh,
Now, me as a health and safety nerd, anorak, whatever you like to call it, I'm always looking out for something like that.
yes.
But if I had have been the person who'd never known any of that, I could very easily. And the guy was a gentleman. He opened the door and I went out. But I
Hmm.
nearly run into, there could definitely have been. So sometimes the ones that look good maybe aren't just as good as what they are. Some people can work in an antiquated working environment, but where the systems are in place that are very, very good, they're safer than people maybe in something. So it's mixed, David. It's mixed.
No, I would agree with that. I think that's a very true statement. I'm seeing the same out there. I mean, I suppose the one thing I would say in my time in the workplace, it's coming on 25 years. I've definitely seen improvements with physical safety. I've definitely
Yes.
seen improvements with standards of training. And I'm definitely even seeing improvements in standards of management where it is a wee bit more collaborative. But I would
Yes.
also agree with you in the sense I think we have a ways to go. I think the bar can certainly be raised on all fronts. That's physical safety and that's management standards and everything in between.
Well, one thing I'll sort of say, because we sort of talked about regulations and people, we think about people, the actual enforcement of regulations, enforcement of legislation. But let's think of a situation if someone is working at height in an organisation. So they're carrying out work in height, and they fall. So whether it's off a ladder or whatever it happens to be, seriously injured, or heaven forbid, but there's a fatality. You know, it's the biggest cause of workplace fatality. Health and safety executive come in and they
Mhm.
look, and if they find that the organisation hasn't provided training for the person, hasn't provided the right equipment, haven't been doing their risk assessment, all of those things, then chances are that organisation is going to be prosecuted in court, okay, and quite rightly so. But say a person who is working in an organisation is overwhelmed, and but they may have other things outside, because you and I have both agreed that people have stressors outside work, inside work, and whatever. But say partly, they're working in a toxic working environment, and they go on that at height, and they jump off it, okay, to their death. It's going to be an awful lot more difficult to get justice for that person. Is anybody ever going to look at what that is? Because the person who climbs up the ladder and does a safe system of work might have the same problems as the person who, so I honestly feel, and I'm not, the enforcing authorities are the clever ones with regards. I'm not suggesting that I can say this is what should happen, because obviously if people aren't following the management standards, they're not going to be prosecuted. But again, what they are, their guidance. But I feel that if they cannot show that they have put in place controls to manage the physical and mental health, at least they get an improvement notice or even a warning. And if they haven't made any changes, then they could have an improvement notice placed upon them. So people outside, what they have to do, if people feel that they have been so badly treated in a toxic, maybe singled out for maybe unfair treatment, or whatever it happens to be, whatever bullying, whatever it happens to be in the workplace, it could be missed for promotion, anything, whatever it happens to be, and they become depressed or become stressed and all the rest of it. The only thing that they can do is either leave, or they can go and see a solicitor and take a civil claim. And an awful lot of ordinary human beings neither have the money for that, or they could even deal with the stress of actually having to do that. But I could just imagine the first case that came up, and it was on the IOSH book, the first organisation that has been prosecuted by putting their people under under work-related stress, uncontrolled work-related stress. It wouldn't half shake up the rest of the organisations to see it happening. But that's for the powers that be, David. I have absolutely no jurisdiction over that one there. I can only hope.
No, look, again, it's a very valuable point. I'm seeing others starting to raise the same type of messages. Again, like I kind of do feel a bit of sympathy for organizations in some ways, in the sense that organizations is really a collection of people and people trying their best. But I suppose we're all human and we've all had difficulties at certain times throughout our career that, for certain different reasons. And look, I do think that for companies and organizations to get the most value out of their employees, it is the next development in occupational safety and health, where we're starting to look at well-being and mental health. Because I would be very fascinated to know how many accidents were actually workplace stress, or stress in general, or mental health was actually a contributing factor to the accident. How much of what was going outside of work came in and contributed towards somebody who, say,
Absolutely.
for example, didn't wear the harness at height and took a fall, or
Yeah.
didn't check the ladder was safe before they climbed it, or whatever it was. I do think
Yes.
there's something there.
Yes.
And I suppose the
Um,
other thing I'd say in the health and safety executive, forgive me, I must admit, I do have a lot of appreciation for the health and safety executive, in the sense that a very thankless job, a bit like our own.
uh-huh.
You know what? Maybe that's something they need to be looking at on a legislative sort of approach. Maybe that is a development for them.
Well, when we were talking earlier on about consultation with the workforce, what about if the health and safety executive did a little bit of consultation with people like ourselves? And listen to what was said. And yes, we can have a really good debate, and they can tell us to go to where and all the rest of it, about things. But maybe there's something that we would say, that someone would say, yeah, that has merit. Let's look at that.
Hmm.
When Northern Ireland's always known, as far as politics is concerned, of being let's put it substandard. Wouldn't it be absolutely fantastic if Northern Ireland could lead the way, and people start to talk about, I wish I worked in Northern Ireland, because see, when you go to work in Northern Ireland, you're safe physically and mentally. Wouldn't, if that would just get the hairs on my arm just lifting up and all the rest of it. And It is a thankless task. I do feel myself as I'm getting older and all the rest of it, and I hit the brick wall many, many times. It is a thankless task. It'd be an awful thing to spend all this time working at it and all the rest of it, not to make a dent or not even to lead the way for younger people coming along and say, "Do you know what? I was speaking to those people, and that's why I do this job. It would be fantastic, but who knows? Who knows? We
Well,
just have
Nicola,
to
I
see
must
what
admit,
happens.
I know that you've certainly made an impact with myself, and there's other professionals I speak to around my age bracket. They all say the same.
Well, that's
I've
lovely.
learned a lot from you, and it's
That's
been very
lovely.
beneficial. Now, I
But
hate
I
to put
learn all the
pressure on
things
us,
from, I love I mean, I can learn so much from all of you. I learn
and
so much from all of you
I feel the
because
same
you're
even for the
young and
next
you see
generation.
things and. Yep.
I know I feel the same even for the next ones coming through. We can all learn from each other, and it's a great thing. Now, I hate to put pressure on us. We have 6 minutes left,
Okay.
and we've got as far as your observations about workplace. So
Okay.
yeah, it takes us right to practical advice for the next generation. I mean, what would you advise people like me, or even the people coming behind me, or what sort of advice would you give us?
Well, yes, what sort of advice? Well, my advice to you would be to really include everyone in your work, be seen in your workplace as the person who to consult with health and safety, not the person who is responsible for everybody's health and safety in the place, but as the person who's got the competence in health and safety to be able to work with each member of staff to make their job safe. So getting out there and getting that word out there that the people are responsible for their own health and safety and you're there to help them achieve that. I would say that young people who are doing qualifications get as much practice as you can get. So no matter what it is that you're learning, I know when I did my NABOSH, I couldn't have done anything anywhere. Although I got my NABOSH, but it didn't give me any practical skills whatsoever. So getting out there, learning about plant and machinery, get away out there, go into the hire shops, talk to the guys, say, how does it work? What happens if this does? Get in there and get a really good understanding of that. Always take time to listen and and not telling people and being a dictator, but actually reasoning with people and having a collaborative open mind.
Oh, that's brilliant, Nicola. No, great advice. I'm listening, so I'm taking a few notes, and hopefully I'm going to incorporate everything you've said. Um,
Wouldn't it be wonderful? I mean, I've done a lot of work with guys who work on the docks and things like that, and they absolutely, and then they love me because I go in. I don't think those people are anywhere less than me. Not to mention they're driving far better cars than I am. Those being 60 grand a year and all the rest of it. But those guys, what it means to them to have a little bit of respect, and if there's this word coming up again, it means so much to them. But it also warms me because they're making me welcome in their world. And that wouldn't happen unless we were talking together and being together as human beings. I think that's maybe something, maybe even if we end with that, is treating health and safety of looking after human beings. So human beings looking after other human beings, not quotations of, yes, we will love to come out with our legislation and all the rest of it, but in actual fact, treating people with care, respect, and a bit of dignity and compassion. And I think if we did that, we might see an awful, awful, awful lot more feedback and an awful lot more positive things happen.